Hey, morning everybody. This is Caroline. Thanks for coming to our webinar. We've got Paul Morley here, Will Clark, and Deborah Valentine. They're going to be presenting on an Affordable Care Act update. So if everyone can hear me okay, we'll go ahead and start. All right, Deborah, here you go.
Good morning, everyone. We told you in the beginning that there'll be lots of updates to the Affordable Care Act, and as they came across or we discovered new things, we would share those with you, and that's what we're going to do today. So we'll move forward here, if I can get this to work. Okay, so the things we're going to go over today are some updates on the ACA website, what's going on with that, exchange notices for state employees, the monthly ACA reports that you've all been anxiously waiting for, and rehire guidelines. We're going to talk about those today, roll those out for you. So the first one is the ACA website. Hopefully you've all been out to the website and seen the great work that Travis and Lo and Jenny have done for us. You're able to see the video and all the tools that are out there. Remind all the managers and employees to go out there and check it out, and we're going to be bringing some new things on there like the liability FAQs. They're being reviewed right now, so hopefully we will have those out fairly soon. And if you have suggestions for the website, we would love to hear them, so you can let me or Will or Paul know about those. The next thing we're going to discuss are the exchange notices that need to go out fairly soon to all state employees. These exchange notices, there's a federal format that we have to follow, and they will talk about the existence of the exchanges, the services that are offered at the exchanges, and how to contact the exchange. So everyone will be notified. The existing employees have to be notified before October 1st. And our plan is to do it probably in September. We don't want to do it any sooner because some of the exchanges are behind and not everything's put out there yet. So we want to make sure everything's in line before we send it out and say that employees, can start going to these exchanges if they're not up and ready. New employees will need to receive these notices within 24 days of hire date. And regardless of benefit status or full or part-time, every employee has to receive these notices. It's a federal regulation. So we'll be working with probably Eric to help us get these out like we did the SBCs. And so the exchanges the open enrollment period is October 10th of 13, so just in a couple of months, through March 3rd of 14. And that's this year only. The following years it will always be October 1st through December 31st. If you want to know a lot more detail about the exchanges, you can contact me and I can send you that information. But we just wanted to let you know these notices will be going out, and so employees might have questions or wonder what they're about. You're welcome to talk to them about them or refer them to Eric here in DHRM, and we will help them go through those. The next part that we're going to talk about are the ACA reports that you've all been anxiously awaiting for, and Paul is going to talk to you about those.
Hello everyone, this is Paul. I just wanted to hopefully quickly talk about these ACA reports that we are trying to get out to everyone. As you know, we have been tracking employees for coverage under the ACA as of May 1st, 2013. And I know we've had a lot of questions about when you're going to start seeing reports on the employees that we've been tracking. And so that's what the intent of this section is to just kind of go over what we're doing and when hopefully we'll be able to send those reports out to you. The reports will we're working on getting the measurement report out to you by July 22nd. Now, when we presented this, or when we prepared this presentation, we didn't know that Lowe would be leaving, and so that leaves the data team as a significant player in creating those reports, and so we're still hoping to get those out by July 22nd, but they're quite short-staffed, and so that's, to take that with a grain of salt. What the reports will include is data from May and June, because we started in May 1st, and in June also we're going to have data on current and new hire employees and the hours that they're working. Now, a word of caution on these reports: we expect that you're going to find some errors with them, and that's a good thing, and it's an intentional, I guess the errors aren't a good thing, but it's intentional that we're sending these reports out knowing that there's probably going to be some tweaks that we need to make. We're using this initial phase out of reports to test the functionality of the reporting mechanism, and one of the things that you should be aware of is this has been a really complex project in terms of how do we track those that should be offered coverage and take into account everybody. There's some employees that aren't in payroll and others that track their hours differently, and so we realized that the admin, the folks up at admin can't really take this on and look at all the angles without having the field involved, and so that's what we wanted to do is to get you involved. The good thing is we do have some time to get this all figured out. We're not going to have to offer someone coverage next month. That we have until next year. Of course, you need to know, and supervisors and managers need to know how to schedule their employees. But the liability of tracking, we do have some time to figure out and get all the bugs worked out with this. So we are looking for some feedback from you on this initial phase out of reports. Some of the things that we would like you to work with your agency management to identify are employees that shouldn't be on the report. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about some that will show up, and I'm sure those will be the first ones that you say should not be on the report, and we'll explain why they are on the report. But we really want you to kind of look at the employees and see who's showing up. Generally, what we want to be identifying are those employees that don't have a medical plan, and that's who are going to be showing up on your report. And what it will do is it will give you an idea about the hours and those that may be approaching the level where they would be in danger of having to be offered coverage. But we want you to look at and see if there are any benefited employees, that are receiving the benefited package, may not need to be on that report. Employees that are no longer working, the issues that you might see with hours that are showing up, but probably the most important thing that you could help us identify are employees that that should be included, but that are not being captured on this report. Because that's really where the liability is. If we miss somebody that we need to offer coverage, we want to make sure that those employees are captured. Any issues that you find with these reports, we'd like you to coordinate those with Will Clark, and we can work through and program any changes that need to be there. So the next part that I'm going to talk about is the reporting process. What this is just a high-level chart that breaks down the process that the data goes through to help us create these reports. And I think I thought about this, and I don't want to get in too much detail, but I thought it might be helpful for you to see how these reports are being compiled and to see how they're going to be coming out to you so that you may have some feedback on this as well. And so we'll just move forward with that. The first two figures that show up on your screen are where we're getting the data from. There are two sources really that we're getting the data. One is the finance data warehouse. That houses the leave hours and the medical plan information. And then we have that connecting in with HRE, which talks about, or which houses the effective dates of the measurement date information that we need so that we can determine what those periods of time, the measurement dates need to be, as well as the employee information and retirement code information. And so it starts from those two sources. And then the information goes into, and I'm really simplifying this, and Lyle will probably hit me over the head, but this is really simplified. It goes into a data repository, and data folks can explain that better to you, but somehow all that information comes together, and then it spits out some different reports. What we're looking at are three different types of reports that the data is going to come out in. And so we'll go over those quickly. The first report that you see is the ACA coverage report. Now that is a monthly report that will tell us who must be notified that they are eligible for coverage under the ACA. This is a report to us up here where the liability is. It is our responsibility to offer coverage to those who are eligible. And so that's the report that will come up, will show us, and will activate to us that we need to offer that employee coverage. And then on the other side of the screen, the audit report, is a discrepancy report to help us determine data issues between the finance data warehouse, what the finance data warehouse is telling us, and what HRE is telling us. We plan on running that report quarterly. The reason that this is significant is you'll see as you look at the reports that we send you is that finance data warehouse houses the medical plan information. That's where the liability is. If an employee is not receiving a medical plan, then that employee needs to be offered coverage. And HRE doesn't have the medical plan information, but we do have retirement code information. It'll help us kind of line up those employees that are benefited, that should be receiving a medical plan, but may not be. But the report that you're going to see next month, we hope, is the measurement report, the middle bottom of your screen. That is a monthly report. What that's going to tell us, and what it's going to tell you, is are those employees that you're tracking, those employees that you need to be aware of, and what hours that they are going to be working. And that's what I'm going to talk about for the last part of my presentation. This is an example of what that report will look like. Please note that this report is subject to change. We talked about that this is a trial period. I already know one field that's going to be on there, and that's going to be the effective dates of the measurement periods that we're dealing with. And so that, there are certain columns and fields that you'll see. But this is generally what information we're pulling in and that we're going to be providing to you. We are also still working on the functionality of this report. So if some of these numbers don't make sense to you, that's not the purpose of this example. We're going to get the functionality working, but when you test it, it would be helpful if we had that information as part of your feedback. This is just an example of the types of information that we thought would be valuable for you and management. Most of this information on the report is self-explanatory, but I would like to just go over a few of the columns and explain what they mean and what they're going to tell you. if you look at this first column, the average hours column that shows up on your screen, this is the average hours in a week that an employee is working over a 12-month measurement period. It should be noted that this field will populate in accordance with the average that the employee is currently working. To have over 30 hours in this field doesn't always mean that the employee will need to be offered coverage. For example, a seasonal employee may work more hours at different periods in their employment, so it won't be significant in terms of that seasonal time. Later on, they won't work as many hours, and so that average will kind of go down over time, or it could go up over time. But it's kind of a measurement that you can use to say, hey, this is what this employee is working. Obviously, if an employee over a year's time, if that average stays above 30, then that employee is going to have an average over 30 and will then need to be offered coverage. This next field, the remaining hours field that you see, establishes a limit on that 30-hour average column. What that will show you, and this is a field that we're still working on the functionality of, but what that field will show you is the number of hours remaining in the 12-month period that a supervisor can work with. So if the average hours are coming over 30 and you still have a lot of remaining hours left, it's probably not a big major deal. But once that remaining hours goes down to 0, you've got a problem, or a supervisor has a problem. If it goes to 0, then you know that employee is going to have to be offered coverage. So the adjustments in the work schedules at that point cannot be made, and it won't be significant in terms of trying to alleviate giving that employee health insurance coverage under the ACA. A negative number obviously means that employee has exceeded the limit. But that column will help you try to understand what a supervisor has to work with for an employee.
Sorry.
All right. So the next field is this retirement code field. And I wanted to point out this field only because this is where you're going to start scratching your head and having a lot of questions on. This field shows what retirement code the employee is in. That's not new news to anybody here. But what will be a little bit strange are these arrows that came in at the bottom that shows that there are some employees that will show up on this report that have a retirement code and should be getting a medical benefit. So why are we tracking them? The question, or the easy way to answer that, is that this is where the discrepancy with the finance data warehouse comes in. While they have a retirement code, they don't have a medical plan through the finance data warehouse. So we're still going to have to track those employees and offer them coverage. And then they have the choice to decline. Most likely what these employees have is some other coverage somewhere else, or obviously they would have chosen to enroll in coverage with us. But there could be some that have fallen through the cracks that did not get covered for some reason. And so we have to track them. There's going to be quite a number of rehired retirees that show up, and this is because of the sick leave retirement benefit that they're receiving. They're not being paid through payroll, but they are receiving a medical benefit. The problem is we don't always have a good way to tell whether those hours have run out and can exclude them easily off of this report. And so what we are most likely going to do is we're probably going to separate employees with retirement codes that have a full benefits package and put them in a separate tab those are probably not the ones you need to be as concerned about. And we know you're going to get people like, maybe some department heads or somebody that might show up, and obviously you're not going to bother them or worry too much about them if they're working over 30 hours a week, because we know that they're probably going to be okay. But because they don't have the medical plan in the finance data warehouse, then that we still have to track them for the ACA. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about was kind of the distribution of this report, and how this report is going to be distributed. The best way that we thought about doing this is to have the HR managers receive the distribution of this report, and then you could decide how you wanted that to go out through the field to your customer agencies. We know that that's just is typically the way we've done other reports, and feel like this is probably going to work the best that way. But again, that's subject to your feedback as well. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the guidance, some new guidance on what's happening with rehired employees, and Will is going to cover that section of our presentation.
All right. Excuse me. All right, guys, this is Will. I'll go through the guidance that we have for rehired employees. First thing I want to put out there to make sure you understand that this guidance is not finalized. This is the proposed guidance at this time. We are charged to use it until there is final guidance has been approved. So as we go through this, remember these employees are current employees that either get terminated or quit, and then we rehire them, and this is the guidance on how and what steps we take when we bring them back. So to consider a new employee, the period of employment, and let me just also say this, the next slide will go through some visual examples, so bear with me as we go through this verbiage, and then I'll show you some visual examples that'll explain it a little bit better. So the new employee, a period of employment is less than the break in service and not offering health insurance. The second point is break in service is greater than or equal to 26 consecutive weeks. And then the last point on this, and this is also known, this last point, as the rule of parity, and that is the break in service is greater than or equal to 4 weeks and is greater than the period of employment. Okay, so as I said, we'll go through this. I'll show you a little bit more visually on the next slide. So as we move on to an employee that we would consider continuing, that verbiage is break in service is less than 4 weeks. Period of employment is greater than the break in service. And then this last point, the break in service happens during a stability period and the employee is qualified. And that'll be the last example or scenario I'll show you on the next slide, so you can get a visual for that. Now, if you have any concerns about the above guidance, you can contact Jennifer Krell. She'll set up a meeting with the ACA team, and we can go through that more thoroughly. All right, so the next slide will show you some visual timelines. Scenario 1, as you can see, the employee will work for 6 weeks. That employee is either terminated or quits, which is represented by the 10 weeks of the black bar. So they come back after a 10-week break in service. So what that means is because the break in service is greater than 4 weeks and greater than the working time, the employee will come back as a new hire and they'll go through an initial measurement period again. All right, scenario 2. The employee works for 36 weeks. They're terminated or they quit. They come back after 18 weeks of break in service. Okay, so that break in service is greater than 4 weeks, but it's less than the working time. So the employee comes back as a rehire. Now in this scenario, the break in service happens during the completion of the initial measurement period and lasts through the admin period and into the stability period. So for this scenario, we look to see if the employee averaged 30 hours or more during that 36 weeks they worked to determine if they qualify for the ACA benefits during the remaining stability period. So as you can see on the visual part, they have the 36 weeks, the break in service, and then we're going to go back. We're going to average those hours for the 36 weeks, determine if they qualify. If they do, then we will offer those benefits for the remainder of that red bar, the stability period. Now this third scenario is a little bit different. And as we go through it, you may have questions. Please type those in if you have any, or if you feel more comfortable. Like I said, we can set up a meeting. But the scenario 3, the employee will work the entire initial measurement period, and it's determined during the admin time if the employee qualifies or doesn't qualify for the ACA benefits. The employee is terminated or quits after working in the stability period, that red bar. All they need to do is work just one day. As long as they put in one working day within the stability period, then after their break in service, which you'll see is the 27 weeks. Even though, as we've talked before, the 26 weeks is the mandatory maximum time, in this scenario, the employee's break in service is irrelevant because the employee qualified for the ACA benefits during the initial measurement period. And as long as they are brought back, excuse me just a sec, as long as the employee works just one day within the stability period after qualifying, they return within the same stability period, they are brought back as a continuing employee, and we have to offer the ACA benefits they qualified for the remainder of that stability period. Now if this scenario happened, let's say, but the employee did not qualify during the initial measurement period, they would return as a new hire because that 27 weeks break in service is longer than the 26 that we have in our guidance. So this is kind of a caveat, if you will, to this guidance, and it only pertains to an employee who qualifies and works one day, at least one day within the stability period. And their break in service happens after, they come back within the same stability period. We bring them back as a continuing employee and offer those benefits for the remainder of that stability period. All right, so I realize what I just described with these scenarios may not be completely understood or answer your questions. So at this time, please feel free to ask questions, or if you feel more comfortable trying to describe your questions in another format, please email myself, Deborah, or Paul, or contact Jennifer Krell to set up a meeting with us to go through your questions and or scenarios. We'd be more than happy to assist in understanding this complicated information. With that said, if anyone has any questions, please submit them.
Let's see. There's a question here that says, will the exchange notice that will be sent to current benefited employees make it clear that they do not need to do anything, that their health benefit is not being changed or modified? That's from Patricia.
Patricia, that's a great question. We're going to try and send that out in a way that makes it clear to employees that they don't have to take that option. I mean, most state employees, I would say the vast majority, will not be interested in the exchange, but by law we're still required to send it. So yes, we're going to do our best to make it really clear that this is for their information. It's a legal thing that we have to do, but they are more than welcome to stay on our plan, which will actually be beneficial to them at this point anyway. So thank you. That's a great question.
Any other questions out there? And again, Will mentioned that if you have questions and would like to meet with the ACA team, you can go ahead and schedule that through Jennifer. Or if it's just a quick, simple question that you think, you can email Paul's team or Paul.
I'll go with John's team.
Okay, John's team.
Deborah, Will, Paul, Billy.
Right.
Any of them. All right. Okay, this is from Jennifer. Will the exchange notices be mailed or emailed or both? We have many employees without email addresses. That's from Jenny Wakefield.
Again, great question, Jenny. Thank you. We will send as many as we possibly can electronically. That's acceptable. But we know we do have employees who don't have email addresses. So as we did with the SBCs, when that was became a requirement, we will mail those in the mail if need be. And Lyle has been really great to provide us with reports that show who has email and who doesn't. And that's how we sent the SBCs. So we will do the same with the notices. So we'll make sure everyone gets them.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more questions at this time. Oh, let's see, one just came in. This is from Roseanne Ricks. How soon will this webinar be posted on the Gateway? In the next couple of days, Roseanne. I'll get it posted on the Gateway. All right. Okay. Any more questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Not forever, but you know. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this morning's webinar. Thanks to the presenters for collecting that complicated information. I know sometimes this is some heavy topic stuff here, but it's important that we all understand it. So again, this information will be posted on the Gateway under the webinar tab. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks, everybody.